Today we are looking at a case from the 1930s. So sit back, as for the first time on this channel, we are going to Cuba. The Cuban Republic is an archipelago in the Caribbean, near the United States coast and Mexico, consisting of a large island, expanding 1,250 kilometers, which includes the island of Juventud and more than 400 keys and smaller islands. For centuries, Cuba has played a pivotal role due to its strategic location, and it was here where the explorer Christopher Columbus first set foot on American soil. Soon after, Spain took control of the island. Following the Spanish conquests of Central and South America, the precious metals extracted were then taken to Cuba for storage until they were transported to Spain. Despite Spain losing control over many Latin American countries during the 19th and 20th centuries, they continued to govern Cuba, which was the last Spanish-controlled territory in the Americas. Cuba's journey to independence from Spain was marked by years of determined resistance and pivotal conflicts. The 10 Years' War between 1868 and 1878 saw Cuban rebels battling Spanish colonial forces, which sparked international attention. Although the war ended without total independence, it set the stage for further unrest. In 1898, there was an explosion on the ship USS Maine in Havana Harbour, and this prompted America's intervention and Spain's defeat. The Treaty of Paris then granted Cuba its long-sought independence. The transition to self-governance wasn't smooth, resulting in Cuba's post-independence era from 1902 to 1958, being characterized by a series of challenges and transformations. Despite gaining formal independence, the 1901 Platt Amendment granted the US a degree of influence, as Cuba grappled with political corruption, economic dependence on sugar exports, and stark social inequalities. These issues bred discontent and unrest among the population. During this period, Celia Mena entered the world. Born into a humble family, in a quaint village nestled within the province of Guantanamo, which is situated at the easternmost tip of Cuba. This province is renowned for the presence of the US military base that was established in 1903. However, beyond the military significance, the province boasts a striking natural charm. Its landscape is adorned with fertile fields, which nurture crops such as sugarcane, tobacco, and cacao, all of which thrive under the embrace of the warm and inviting climate. While growing up, Celia was devoid of the privileges of a formal education. However, she was beautiful and had what was described as flawless teeth. She had an innate gift for dancing, which set her apart from her peers. As she grew into a young woman, she felt the need to leave her home, and with great aspirations, she made her way to Havana, Cuba's capital city, with its seafront allure, grand architecture, and buildings such as a Gran Teatro, Paseo del Prado, Plaza Vieja, and Plaza de la Catedral. It was very different to the small village where she had grown up. But Havana was not only a city with great opportunities, it also presented many challenges for a young woman in the 1930s. Celia had a very limited educational background, which made finding stable employment a formidable task, but she was resourceful and found a niche in the world of max factor makeup, utilising her skills to carve out a modest living. Once she was established in the city, she enrolled in the Galatea Dance Academy, where she had a dream of meeting a handsome young man. It was here, against the backdrop of music and dance, that she met René Hidalgo. René was the embodiment of respectability. He emerged from a lineage that bore the weight of honour and dignity. Tall and fair-haired, his handsome persona spoke of a family that held high expectations. His father had sent him to the USA to study English, a practical step to elevate his future prospects. Upon returning to his homeland, he had secured a place in the hallowed halls of the Havana Medical Faculty. With unwavering enthusiasm, he charted a course towards a career as a doctor, navigating the complexities of theory and practical training. However, the relentless demands of medical school and the hours of study were stressful, so a friend suggested that he should go to the dance halls of Galatea to try and unwind. Here, he found himself drawn to Celia Mena, a beautiful young woman whose charm created a powerful pull on him. This soon became an obsession that he could not ignore. It dominated his thoughts and started to overshadow his academic pursuits. They started to go out together, but René could not get the beautiful young woman out of his mind and wanted to be with her as often as he could. His obsession started to get in the way of his studies, and he was faced with a difficult decision. Eventually, against all reason, he chose to give up his dream of becoming a doctor in order to be with the woman who had captured his heart. He knew he needed to find employment and found work in the Cuban police force. Then, together with Celia, they rented a room on the top floor of a building at 969 Monte Street, a poor area on the outskirts of the city, which was known to be a neighbourhood where prostitutes would work in the evening. At first, things went well for the couple, but as time passed, the familiarity of living with each other revealed the mundane realities of life. Behind the closed doors of their small room, their relationship started to suffer and was marred by jealousy and conflict. Celia's beauty drew Amara's, and René's possessive nature made him extremely jealous. She would also never go out without putting on her Max Factor makeup. She told René that she needed to wear it as it showed customers how good the product was, but he believed that she did it to attract the attention of men. Neighbours would hear them shouting at each other and would then gossip about the heated arguments that they had just overheard. They surmised that these were just a reflection of the pressures that financial hardships can impose on a relationship, especially with René and Celia being so young. Celia was unable to write, so René kept up the correspondence with her family in Guantanamo. He would write to them often, always offering reassuring words about their daughter's life in Havana. Things didn't seem to improve between the couple. The shouting continued. Celia would still go out wearing her makeup and trying to look the very best she could, and René continued to be very jealous of all the male attention she would get. On the 8th of March 1939, a labourer was going about his work in the sewer system at the corner of 7th Avenue in the Mariano area of Havana. To his shock, he stumbled upon a disturbing discovery: a carefully wrapped leg placed inside a fabric sack. Without wasting time, he rushed out to the street to find a policeman. Soon a crowd of onlookers and curious individuals had gathered at the scene, creating a sombre and shocked atmosphere as they learned about the unsettling discovery. As police officers arrived, they secured the area by setting up a cordon and proceeded to closely examine the severed limb. They organised a further search of the sewer before transporting the sack and its contents to the mortuary, all the while wondering if additional remains from the same victim would be found. The news quickly spread, becoming the main topic of conversation, not only in Havana, but throughout the entire island. The discovery of a young woman's leg captured widespread attention through radio broadcasts and was prominently featured in both local and national newspapers. The police initiated an investigation into missing persons in Havana. The public, too, became deeply engaged in solving the case and eagerly awaited further developments. Every evening, they would huddle around their radios, intrigued to learn whether additional body parts had been discovered or washed up along the nearby shores. Several days later, more parts of the body that had been neatly wrapped in fabric were found, this time in the Dismero district of Guanabacoa. All were then taken to the mortuary. The investigation was under the leadership of Israel Castellanos, the director of forensic identification. He noted that the limbs had been a precision cut, possibly by a surgeon's scalpel or a butcher's knife, and believed that the person who had committed this gruesome crime had some medical knowledge. Doctors had managed to assemble almost the entire body, but the head was still missing. The theory that the perpetrator possessed some medical knowledge suggested a disturbing intention behind the meticulous dismemberment. The heinous act not only concealed the crime, but also masked the victim's identity. The police speculated whether this might be the work of a serial killer, leaving behind a distinctive hallmark by wrapping the severed limbs in fabric sacks. Suddenly, the people of Havana, and in fact all of Cuba, were both excited and relieved when the evening radio broadcast informed them that the victim's head had been discovered. In a residence on Dificultad Street, nestled in the Batabano district, the missing head had apparently and unexpectedly been discovered in the depths of a latrine. A group of youths had been given the unenviable task of cleaning the pits when they stumbled upon a neatly wrapped object. When they investigated it further, they realised that it was a human head. Following the gruesome discovery, the incident once again dominated headlines and became the focus of island-wide discussions. Detailed images of the skull were then promptly displayed in the newspapers. The final discovery of the remaining body parts played a pivotal role in reconstructing the identity of the unknown victim. With the body now complete, detectives found it easier to establish factors such as age and race. Cuba's diverse population, composed of people from all corners of the globe, which had added additional complexity to the identification. A family who lived near the latrine told the police that they believed it to be that of Celia Mena. They knew her to be the girlfriend of René Hidalgo. They said that the couple frequently visited and had spent much time there together. However, the police had to be sure. An X-ray of the teeth was published in the newspapers, and this resulted in a dentist coming forwards, saying that the teeth visible in the newspaper matched those of one of his patients. The dentist then presented his evidence to the forensic team in Havana, which was led by Dr. Jorge Castroverde and Dr. Carlos Criner. This revelation confirmed the identification of the young lady to be Celia Mena, the girlfriend of René Hidalgo. Police interviewed neighbours of the suspect, who were able to further shed light on the relationship between René and Celia. Among them was Ana Margarita, a close friend of Celia's. She painted a vivid portrait of her. According to Ana, Celia was a great flirt, a woman who revelled in attention and showcased herself with much confidence. She was always impeccably presented, her hair fashionably styled, and her makeup flawlessly applied. Ana also said that Celia had an obsession with the Max Factor brand. She told officers that while loyal as a girlfriend to René, the relationship was marred by constant clashes about Celia's flirtish behaviour, and she believed that René had started to regret forsaking his medical studies to be with her. Another neighbour recounted an incident when René returned to their apartment and found Celia absent. He later discovered her engaged in conversation with another neighbour, a sight that fueled his fury. What followed was a tumultuous confrontation, marked by vehement arguments, although on other occasions arguments often started when Celia would ask René for money so she could buy more cosmetics. The owner of a hardware store revealed a chilling detail, telling the police that René Hidalgo had purchased wax paper and a canvas sack at his Garcia del Rio hardware store, a business positioned just across the road from the tenement building where René and Celia lived. People living in the same block were eager to unveil the aspects of Celia's life and shared their insights with both the police and the press. One confirmed that Celia was in fact illiterate, and that during her time in Havana, she had never acquired the ability to read or write. It was René who shouldered the responsibility of writing to her family on her behalf. With these revelations, a sinister profile began to take shape in the eyes of both law enforcement and the media. René Hidalgo, once perceived as a fine upstanding young man with a great future ahead of him, now found himself cast as a cold-blooded killer who had committed a rage-fueled act and ended the life of his innocent girlfriend. René was arrested in February 1940 and taken into custody. Following all the evidence that was presented to him, he confessed to causing the death of Celia Mena, although he claimed it had all been a tragic accident. He said that on the 2nd of March 1939, following a heated argument, his mounting jealousy towards her reached breaking point. The sacrifices he had made for her, which included leaving his promising medical career, had started to weigh heavily on his mind. The living situation in a dingy top-floor room within a run-down tenement had amplified his frustrations. Fueled by anger, he lashed out, striking her in a fit of rage. The impact caused her to fall, her head colliding with the concrete floor, which fractured the base of her skull. He said that he attempted to revive her, but this proved futile, and he believed that Celia was dead. He added that the tenement they resided in bustled with occupants coming and going, making it impossible for him to move the body without being noticed. Instead, he opted for a grim solution and decided to dispose of her in stages. he placed her in the bathtub and inflicted a deep cut into her knee using a shaving blade. Her reaction startled him. She awoke and started to complain. Shocked, afraid, and in panic, he struck her again, and this time, she died. The police were not convinced by his story. The lie detector had recently been introduced to the country, and René became the first person in Cuba to undergo this new format of interrogation. However, despite being questioned 38 times, the test results failed to yield a conclusive outcome. Despite his claims that the tragedy had initially been an accident, the mounting evidence spoke otherwise. He was brought to trial, and in a lengthy and painstaking legal process, he was eventually found guilty and sentenced to 28 years in prison, which he would serve on Pinos Island. While there, René transformed into a model inmate, marked by his extraordinary intelligence and peaceful demeanour. He assumed roles of leadership and instruction among his fellow prisoners, and during his incarceration, he even got married, his wife being a young woman from Pina del Rio, and together they had 2 children. Despite this, prison life took a toll on his physical appearance, causing a notable deterioration. His once youthful looks were replaced by the effects of guilt and the passage of years, leaving behind a weathered countenance that mirrored the weight he bore for his terrible crime. René's path took a surprising turn when he was granted a pardon and released after serving just 13 years. He returned to Havana to live with his wife and children. A few years later, the Cuban Revolution took place, and on the 1st of January 1959, the 26th of July movement successfully ousted dictator Fulgencio Batista and established a government led by Fidel Castro. The revolution marked a turning point in Cuba's recent history. Eventually, René found work as a caretaker in the Santiago de Las Vegas bus station, and as time went by, there were less people who remembered him. Nevertheless, he became quiet and withdrawn, and did not really engage in too many conversations with colleagues. Following this, he took a position in a funeral parlour. At this point, the young workers had no idea who he was, and many were born years after the crime was committed. It is said that his past would haunt him, and he would sometimes shout, "I didn't kill her." René Hidalgo died in 1992. Hello everyone, and thank you so much for listening. As usual, please leave any comments or feedback you may have, and I hope to see you all again in the next brief case.